It was too much of a show, there was too much Hollywood, there was too much exaggeration, and the impression in 1957 that was, in 1954, that was given was that the problem had been solved, that polio had been conquered.
An historic victory over a dread disease is dramatically unfolded at the University of Michigan. Here, scientists usher in a new medical age with the monumental reports that prove the Salk vaccine against crippling polio to be a sensational success. It's a day of triumph for 40-year-old Dr. Jonas E. Salk, developer of the vaccine. He arrives with Basil O'Connor, head of the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which financed the tests.
When Morris Hilleman was a high school student in Miles City, Montana, he hoped he might qualify as a management trainee for the local J.C. Penney store. Instead, he went on to pioneer more breakthroughs in vaccine research and development than anyone in the history of American medicine. Among the discoveries he made at Merck are vaccines for mumps, rubella, and measles.
Tell me how you found SV40 in the polio vaccine.
Well, that was a Merck thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I came to Merck, and I was going to develop vaccines. And we had wild viruses in those days. Remember the wild monkey kidney viruses and so forth. And I finally, after 6 months, gave up. I said that you cannot develop vaccines with these damn monkeys. We're finished. And if I can't do something about it, I'm going to quit. I'm going to try it. So I went down to see Bill Mann at the zoo in Washington, D.C. And I told Bill Mann, I said, look, I got a problem. I don't know what the hell to do. Bill Mann is a very bright guy. And I said, these lousy monkeys are picking it up while being stored in the airports in transit at these loading, offloading, loading. He said, very simple. He said, you go ahead, get your monkeys out of West Africa and get the African green, bring them into Madrid, unload them there. There are no other traffic through there for animals. Fly them into Philadelphia, pick them up. Or fly them into New York and pick them up right off the airplane. So I brought African greens in. I didn't know we were importing AIDS virus at the time.
And it was you who introduced AIDS virus to the country.
That became
a real story.
What Merck will do to develop a vaccine.
So what he did, he brought in, we brought in those monkeys. Now we had those. And this was the solution. Because those monkeys didn't have the wild viruses. But we had all of these...
Why didn't the greens have the wild viruses since they came from Africa?
Because they weren't being infected in these group holding things with all the other 40 different viruses.
But they had the ones they brought from the jungle, though.
Yeah, they had those, but there were relatively few. What you do is you have a gang housing, you're going to have an epidemic transmission of infection in a confined space.
Oh, is that the problem?
So, anyway, the greens came in. Now we had these, and then we're taking our seed stocks to clean them up, and God, now I'm discovering new viruses. So I said, Judas Priest. Well, I got an invitation from the Sister Kinney Foundation, which was the opposing foundation, and that was the live virus.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they had jumped on Sabin's bandwagon. And they had asked me to come down and give a talk at the Sister Kinney Foundation meeting. And I said, it was an international meeting. I thought, God, what am I going to talk about? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about the detection of non-detectable viruses as a topic. So now I got to have something, that's going to attract attention. So I thought, gee, that damn SV40, that vacuolating agent that we have, I'm going to just pick that particular one. That virus has got to be in vaccines, and it's got to be in Sabin's vaccine, so I quickly tested it. Sure enough, it was in there. And
I'll be damned.
so now, so I go ahead and...
So you just took stocks of Sabin's vaccine off the shelf here at Merck?
Yeah, well, that had not been made at Merck. It was made at Merck.
You were making it for Sabin at this point?
Yeah, it was made before I came.
Yeah, but at this point, Sabin is still just doing these massive field trials. Okay.
In Russia and so forth. So I go down and I talked about the detection of non-detectable virus. And I told Albert...
But at this point, Sabin is still just doing these massive field trials. Okay.
in Russia and so forth. So I go down, I talked about the detection of non-detectable viruses. And I told Albert, I said, listen, Albert, I said, you know, you and I are good friends. But I said, I'm going to go down there and you're going to get upset. But I'm going to talk about a virus that's in your vaccine. Now, you're going to get rid of the virus. Don't worry about it. You're going to get rid of it. But, so of course, Albert was very upset with me. And
What did he say?
Well, he said basically that this is just another obfuscation that is going to upset vaccines. And I said, well, you know, you're absolutely right. But I said, we have a new era here. We have a new era of a detection. And the important thing is to get rid of these viruses.
Why would he call it an obfuscation if it was a virus that was contaminating
Well,
the
no,
vaccine?
because, there are 40 different viruses in these vaccines anyway that we were inactivating. And
But you weren't inactivating his, though.
that's correct. No, that's right. But yellow fever vaccine had leukemia virus in it, and, you know, this is in the days of very crude science. So anyway, I went down and talked to him, and Albert said, well, why are you concerned about it? I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, I have a feeling in my bones that this virus is different. I don't know why to tell you this, but I've been around biology a long time. I just think this virus may have some long-term effects. And he said, what? I said, well, cancer.
I love it.
And
I love
he
it.
said,
Go ahead.
No. I said, Albert, I said, you probably think I'm nuts, but I just have that feeling. Well, in the meantime, we had taken this virus and put it into hamsters. So we had this meeting, and that was sort of the topic of the day, and the jokes that were going around was, gee, we would win the Olympics because the Russians would all be loaded down with tumors. This is where the vaccine was being tested. This was
right.
humorous.
Right.
So, and it really destroyed the meeting. You know, it was a big international.
Yeah, right.
Meeting, so it was sort of the topic. You know. Anyway.
Was this the Cancer Society meeting in the New York Cancer
No,
Society?
this was the Sister Kennedy.
Oh, it's Sister Kennedy. Right.
And Del Becco got up and said that he foresaw problems with these kinds of agents.
Why didn't this get out in the press?
Well, I guess it did. I don't remember. We had no press release on it, obviously. You don't go out. This is a scientific affair within the scientific community. And we knew it was in our seed stock for making the vaccine. That virus, you see, it's 1 in 10,000 particles is not inactivated by formaldehyde. It was good science at the time because that was what you did. You didn't worry about these wild viruses.
So you discovered it wasn't being inactivated in the Salk vaccine?
Correct. So then, the next thing you know is 3-4 weeks after that, I found that there were tumors popping out in these hamsters.
Polio vaccinations cause polio and cancer. There's a myth the polio vaccine has virtually eliminated the wild polio virus in large portions of the world. You see, polio vaccine is the largest cause of polio in the world. The wild virus is being replaced by the vaccine-derived polio virus, which is actually more dangerous than the virus it's supposed to be protecting against. In essence, this much heralded vaccine strategy has replaced one infectious disease with another, even worse strain. What kind of success is that? What about people like you and me who received vaccinations decades ago? In 2002, the journal Lancet published compelling evidence that virus-contaminated polio vaccine is responsible to up to half of the 55,000 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cases that are occurring each year. In addition, polio vaccine appears to be causing an outbreak of brain, bone, and lung cancer. Evidence on how deadly polio vaccine can be began to surface in 1994 when Dr. Michel Carbone, a Loyola University researcher, found the virus SV40, which had never before been detected in humans in half of the human lung cancer tumors. And SV40 has been found in a variety of human cancers. Where did this virus come from? It came from the monkey tissue that was used to make the polio vaccine. Repeated studies show that polio vaccine was contaminated with SV40. This virus has been detected in children who are too young to have received this contaminated vaccine that was administered back in the 50s and the 60s.
When people would tell me that vaccines weren't good, I said, well, what about polio?
Yeah.
And some people shrugged their shoulders and said, well, I don't know, when I came into it, I had some friends say, just go do the research. It was as though they were sending me on a mission. I mean, I had friends arguing with me, and I said, well, what about? And they said, well, I think it was other things. And they had convinced themselves, but I needed very, very, very specific evidence. You know, what was happening? The interesting thing about polio was that it's not real. It's like AIDS, or it's like any other large disease category. They have so many. There's so many different things they call polio. Like if my leg tingled a little right now, or let's say that I had a bad cramp, and I was a certain age, and the cramp was persistent for a few days, that would be polio, and it went away. Let's say that I felt nauseous after going to the swimming pool in the summer of 1948. That would be considered polio. Let's say that I was, God forbid, that a small child becomes paralyzed. Let's hope that doesn't happen, but it did. After what? After going to the swimming pool, after running behind the fogging truck. Well, what was the fogging truck?
With the possibility of a serious infantile paralysis epidemic, health authorities of the city of San Antonio, Texas, attacked the germ carriers throughout the city. With the war-discovered DDT in special sprayers, sections of the city are blanketed with the insecticide in the fight to stop the spread of the dread poliomyelitis. Every suspected spot is sprayed. Even the streams are disinfected, and in the parks and public places, children are forbidden to gather. Tons of DDT are used in this fight against the dread disease, whose principal target is the young. Again, war has contributed one of its discoveries to save life.
From 1945 to 1955, annual pesticide use on farms went from 125 million pounds to over 600 million. Soon, government agencies began treating even the suburbs with DDT.
Dr. Paige Nicholson, water pollution expert, Public Health Service. Do you know how long the pesticides persist in the water once they get into it?
Not entirely.
Do you know the extent to which our groundwater may be contaminated right now by pesticides?
We don't know that either, nor do we know if concentration may be occurring in groundwater.
They decided that the paralysis that they had seen some, significant cases of in the early 19th century were caused by a germ or something spread by flies.
Today's target for this B-25 is Rockford, Illinois. A peacetime mission to spread 500 gallons of DDT, the Army's miracle insecticide, over the city, stricken with an infantile paralysis epidemic. By spraying the city, authorities will test the theory that insects are carriers of the dread germ. Air Force pictures show the method devised by the Army's branch of preventive medicine. Flying at an average altitude of 150 feet, the plane sprays a strip more than 150 yards wide at the rate of 215 gallons a minute. A bomber turns to the ways of peace, becomes an instrument of science, and may become the means of saving countless lives.
And they decided to spray for those flies. So they sprayed something which you might remember from your history books if you read Silent Spring, called DDT. which is a potent neurotoxin which kills insects, but of course has no effect on children. Right, so DDT, and it's in my poster book, which is for sale. There are advertisements from the 50s.
It begins with the war-born development of DDT. This diabolical weapon of modern science saved millions of humans, but killed billions of insects. Man, with this newly discovered force, has at long last gained the upper hand in our age-old struggle. The really heavy blow fell only a few months ago. It came from laboratories where top scientists from famous universities and from industrial and government organizations collaborated to develop something new and different. They succeeded. They perfected Pestroy, the most effective weapon man has ever wielded against insects. In both its forms, powder and liquid, Pestroy means doomsday to us insects. For this new insect destroyer contains a lot of DDT, not just a little. Its DDT content is even higher than government specifications. But the really sure kill feature of this insect killer isn't simply that it contains DDT, it's the way that it makes sure that bugs get the DDT that's in it. For example, take this liquid form, Pestroy DDT synthetic resin coating, ideal for vertical surfaces. It's brushed on easily and quickly and dries in half an hour. It forms a clear, long-lasting protective coating, scarcely noticeable on most surfaces. Other preparations, sprays for instance, not only irritate the nasal passages and fog up the atmosphere, but quickly lose their effectiveness as the fog is dissipated. As a result, spraying must be repeated time after time. But not so with this. Pestroy goes right where it should go to kill insects. And once applied, it keeps right on killing them, week after week, month after month. Here's why. It's compounded with a new type of synthetic resin which binds DDT to any surface, makes it cling, keeps it from brushing off or blowing away. After application, DDT particles form at the surface of the coating, right where the insects walk, creating a long-lasting booby trap for insects. These crystals stay put. They are densely matted, not spindly and loosely knit, not easily shaken off or blown away. Pestroy liquid coating can be applied wherever insects are found, around doorways, for instance. On screens, where it not only kills insects, but also tends to keep the screen wire from rusting. In lockers, where bugs always go in search of food or clothing. On fruit and vegetable stands. In cupboards, the happy hunting grounds for all types of insects. On tables and benches at picnic grounds. In and around basement drains. Garbage and refuse receptacles of all kinds. Cabins and galleys of boats. Anywhere and everywhere bugs like to go. The same deadly effectiveness of the liquid form is found in the Pestroy powder, another constant threat to insect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This particular preparation is recommended for horizontal surfaces. It is so easy to apply because of a new efficient dispenser package. All people have to do is to press the patented top like this. It's a handful of concentrated death. This powder is truly activated. It contains stabilized pyrethrum, an ingredient which literally stampedes insects from their hiding places to bring them into contact with DDT, indoors or outdoors. Stirs them up, drives them out of cracks and crevices, places that hitherto have been home sweet home for insects. Yes, it gets in where DDT can really do a thorough job. And it's perfect for ridding Fido of those unwelcome house guests. This new activated DDT powder also comes in a large pump-type dispenser that's sure death for insects over large areas outdoors. It's made to order for around wood piles, barbecues, patios, house foundations, and so forth. Anywhere and everywhere, people want to make outdoor life around home more comfortable. It's also good for use on swamps and pools of stagnant water. Campsites and wherever else bugs like to breed and gather.
You know, trims wallpaper with DDT, keeps your child safe. DDT is good for me, you know, spray it on cows, spray it in your milk, spray it on your children.
Pesticides weren't always thought to be harmful. To the contrary. In 1947, Time magazine carried an advertisement claiming DDT was good for people, homes, and farms. It took 20 years before scientists realized how dangerous it was.
Well, this is a paralysis-inducing chemical compound. So polio rates went boom.
Insects were believed to spread polio outdoors and in the home. In response to this belief, fearful parents put DDT all through the house. They put it on drawers, they sprinkled it on windowsills, lunch boxes, directly on sandwiches, in water to rinse clothes, bedding, and mattresses, and painted it on the walls of children's rooms. You could even buy DDT-impregnated wallpaper if you wanted to. It's no wonder the well-to-do had such a high problem with polio, is it?
But you could say, what happened before that? Why was there any paralysis in the early 20th century? A wonderful bit of history exists there. A doctor called Ralph Scobie presented this to Congress in the early 50s, I want to say, when they were trying to chase a bug that they wanted to blame for this. And he said, well, actually, geniuses, we were spraying something on the fields and the fruit that children were eating, and it was called Paris green. It was called lead arsenate. It was lead and arsenic. Lead and arsenic. Lead and arsenic. Let's see. Kills people, kills people. Okay. So maybe if you give this to small children, they might become paralyzed or die. Well, that happened. And then he was looking through and Janine Roberts wrote a wonderful article for the scientific magazine. I can't remember at the present. But, and Jim, no, it's going to escape me. But Jim West did great research. Jim West in measuring the amount of DDT production and the incident of polio cases, and DDT and polio, DDT, polio, DDT, polio. Huh, what a coincidence. So let's look at the mainstream's proof. They decided that a stomach bug was responsible. The stomach bug passes through the feces, it comes out. Nobody has any idea how it could possibly get into the nervous system or cause any kind of paralysis. Send more money, we're still working on it. They don't care. People believe it. But they got rid of DDT, and they put out a vaccine. After the vaccine, there was a spike in polio cases because the vaccine caused paralysis. It caused injury. So they said, whoops, it was a bad batch. And then they did something very clever. They decided that the polio that had been polio wasn't polio anymore. In other words, if I had had that cramp for 3 days, I had had polio. But now I had to have that cramp for 60 days. I had to have a cramp for 2 months. And the majority of polio cases in the 90-something percentile were the cramps that went away. The CDC today says that the polio stomach bug causes paralysis. I mean, I'd like the audience to guess, you know, what's the percentage of time that polio causes polio? Depending on your definition of polio, right? Is it 50%? Is it 70%? Their answer is 0.1 to 0.5% of the time. So with polio then becomes the virus that causes polio except for 99.9% of the time. And that's them. Do you believe them? I don't. You spray lead and arsenic, you give it to kids. They called it the summer plague. You know, what do you do in the summer? You go to the pool, you eat the fruit, you eat sugar, you lower your immune system. There's great evidence for this.
DDT toxicity can give anterior horn and the spinal cord changes, just like polio. It can cause respiratory failure just like polio. It causes spasm and flaccid paralysis just like polio. Aside from that, DDT enhances the release and intracellular multiplication of polioviruses. This is a description of DDT poisoning. Tell me if you think this sounds very different from poliomyelitis. Acute gastroenteritis with nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and diarrhea, usually associated with extreme tenesmus, runny nose, cough, and persistent sore throat, followed by persistent or recurrent feeling of constriction or lump in the throat. Now, when people present to the hospital with constriction or lump in the throat or any throat problems, they thought they were developing bulbar poliomyelitis. Occasionally, the sensation of constriction extends substernally to the back and may be associated with severe pain in either arm. Arm pain was a symptom of polio. Pain in the joints, generalized muscle weakness, which was another symptom of polio. Apprehension and exhausting fatigue are usual. The latter are often so severe in the acute stage as to be described by some patients as paralysis. How could doctors possibly have distinguished a case that looked like this from polio? They didn't. It would have been called polio and it would have been treated as such, probably with a crippling outcome. In 1951, Albert Sabin noticed that the American military in the Philippines had astonishingly high rates of polio, approximately 1 in 79 recruits. Yet he was utterly mystified as to why that would be. And he was even more mystified why the Filipino people considered polio the white man's disease at that time. He also noted similar coincidences in China and Japan. This slide is a World War II Army poster from the collection of the National Museum of Health and Medicine at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. And this tells you how to delouse an incoming recruit with DDT. What you do is you loosen all their clothes up and you get the DDT sprayer and you go down the neck, up the sleeves, down the pants, up the pants. You sit them down, you fumigate their head thoroughly, you flip their hat over and you spray it into their hat.
Polio is an odd illness too. It's a little like autism in that it was not around before the late 1800s. Yes? Yeah, it is weird. And you know, this is not in dispute because polio, you're not going to mistake a paralyzed child for not a paralyzed child. They just weren't around, and so again, something happened. Now, what the medical world says happened, it's called the hygiene hypothesis. Have people heard of that? I'll try not to make fun of it, but it is, the idea is that around 1900, as we were becoming more industrialized and more inventions came along, that hygiene and sanitation improved to the point that kids no longer got polio in the first year or two of life, or the first year. They were no longer exposed to it through feces, and because they had flush toilets, and so they didn't get it then. And if they had gotten it then, their mother's antibodies and maternal and nursing would have protected them. But since they got it now at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10, they didn't have that protection, and therefore polio was a much more severe illness, which I just think is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard, because you don't hear that about anything else. I mean, it's like, well, let's see, what can we say to make sense of polio? Because, but why not cholera? Why not anything else? So what happened, there has been a counter-argument about polio for a long time. Even back as early as the early 1900s, some people made the observation that it seemed to be associated with a fungicide. Here we go, with fungicides again. This fungicide happened to be lead arsenate, which is as bad as it sounds. You take a little lead, put a little arsenic in it, put it in a can, put some water in so it's not so strong, and spray it on everything. Spray it on apples. They invented it in Massachusetts to fight the gypsy moth, which was all of a sudden had started attacking apple trees. What's interesting is in 1893 there was a medical journal article that said in Boston that said, is polio more prevalent this year? And it was, and from that point, it started to spread, these epidemics. And as I said, almost immediately, some people said, you know, this looks like, you know, we spray these trees in this, you know, and crops in May and June, and then people get polio in May and June, and, you know, it's not polio, it's this toxic thing that is causing this paralysis. I mean, arsenic and lead are known to cause paralysis. So that was, you know, a counter theory that was considered heresy, right, by the medical community, because polio, there's clearly is a polio virus, et cetera, et cetera. And then when it got worse at the start of at the end of World War II, DDT, right, kind of replaced lead arsenate, so that would be a logical thing. So there was these two competing theories, really. One of them completely trashed and ignored. One thing about polio that people forget is, and I wasn't aware of it, is it you know, it attacked a lot of people in different places in weird ways in the country, on farms, you know, in big cities too, but it just made no sense at all the way it was going around. And I found some maps that I think are interesting. This is the whole era of polio, of big epidemics, 21 to 55. And look at that glob in the, oh look, I can do that, I didn't realize that. I can do that glob in the middle. What is that? You know, that is not the population center of the country. It's just interesting, right? I mean, whatever it means. And then here's another one. So, you know, this shows the eastern half of the country, you know, more affected than the west, which makes sense. There's nobody in the Great Basin there anyway. But look at the northern part of the country, and you can almost kind of see some of that same center blob. And then look at that, how it goes up into Canada. That's really interesting. That is really interesting. And let me just show you one other defined area. I'm going to go to Australia here and show you how this is polio. It's the same kind of chart. The areas that are the darkest are the most intense. Here's just another map of Australia. So anyway, so then, as I've said, that the idea was it was lead arsenate, which I fully believe. I mean, you know, you got to be kidding me that people were getting, you know, infants were getting doses of lead arsenate in their food. But I've started to wonder about DDT, and one reason is this. Here is the wheat growing area of Canada. How about that, huh? Look at that. And oops. And this is the wheat growing area of Canada. And this is the grain growing area of Australia. And there's the polio area of Australia.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The American populace is facing an unconventional warfare scenario. This is information warfare.